What's good, y'all? Welcome back. Welcome back to another F1 video on this lovely Tuesday. Shout out to my boy Josh with all credit goes to him. Absolutely outstanding. Top 10 of the worst F1 tracks ever. Now listen, after seeing what we saw in Monaco, outside of like the first lap, it was boring as hell. So we need to see just the worst F1 tracks we have seen. Now, am I getting flicked off in the first 5 seconds, in the first second of the clip? I have no idea. But accurate representation of racing fans here in New Zealand and Australia. But anyway, I hope you guys are doing good and amazing, doing very well. You guys, let me know you guys thoughts about the F1 from Sunday, the Monaco GP. You guys, let me know you guys thoughts about that. Outside of that, drivers have been complaining about it recently. I think also most has been like for stopping, but hey man, we gotta find a way to fix it. We gotta find a way to... Anyway, let's get started. Don't forget to like the video and sub as well.
Knuckle draggers out there, I have an opinion. And, of course, this video is dedicated to that. To a lot of people, places like Shanghai and Sochi are the worst tracks ever in the history of Formula 1, ever.
It was like a few years ago,
But
so like 2
when you
years
examine the list of all the circuits that have been on the calendar, are they really the worst? Well, since people value my opinion for some reason, here are my top 10 worst Formula 1 tracks of all time. Now, before I delve into this, I really need to stress the fact that I'm not going to include pre-existing circuits before they were supposedly butchered by Herman Tilke. Look, I mean, hey, I get it. He ruined Hockenheim, allegedly. But like, hey, look, calm your tits for a moment. I might just say that for another video. But this one, we're going to be sticking to the originals. Alright, got it?
Hurts.
Sweet, let's get into it. Number 10. Marina Bay.
Dang.
This may be a little bit surprising to some, but let me ask you this. If this race wasn't run under the lights, is there much reason to look forward to this race? The idea of racing under lights on a beautifully laid out track is certainly eye candy for most, but the racing itself never really has been one to look forward to. It's kind of like Monaco. There really aren't many places to pass on this circuit, and really perhaps the circuit's most infamous race was back in 2008, although that race in itself was such a can of worms that in itself should be reserved for another video. Aside from a couple crashes here and there which provided something for the highlights reel, the passing opportunities were minimal, and ultimately most of these races turned out to be bore fests. No offense to Singapore, but this thing really isn't a good F1 circuit. Still want to go though. The lure of not racing in a tourist hotspot does that, I guess, and it ain't too far from Middle Earth either. Number 9. Le Mans. Yep, Formula 1 once raced at Le Mans, but not on the circuit you're thinking of. The thought of racing down the Mulsanne in an F1 car is something that drivers of the time had actually pledged. Ow! It's something they should probably look at doing now. But the safety conscious people of the time thought that the use of the relatively new Bugatti circuit would be apt enough to host the premium motor racing category of the time. Compared to the full-on circuit in the south, this circuit was pretty flat and featureless. Drivers and spectators alike thought it was boring, with only 20,000 people turning up, and so only held one Grand Prix back in 1967 before moving on to Rouen the next year. Number 8. Korea. As a track to drive on.
Drew, imagine that now. You probably get like 20 laps, 25 laps. That's it. Bro, that
Korea is actually a pretty decent facility, but from almost every other aspect, it was a flop. Whilst the circuit now hosts a slew of GT races on the calendar year, it didn't see out the 7-year deal put in place starting from 2010. The racing itself was pretty dismal, with few good memories coming from it, especially if you're Mark Webber. The pit lane too was scary as shit, given how if you went too slow, you got hit up the rear. If you went too fast, you went into the port of Mokpo. The track itself was designed well enough to produce some good racing in the first sector and at least half of the second, but the tight twisty nature of the rest of the circuit meant that passing could only be done if you threw others out of the way. And remember, this was in the era of the Maldonado. Even so, we really didn't see this. The track now sits out in amongst a sea of rice fields, far removed from the world stage where its 15 minutes of fame burned out real fast. Number 7. Detroit. Motor City, Motown, the home of the motor car. And riots, and in the mid-80s, one very ordinary Grand Prix track. Spectators really couldn't see the track too well, unless they had some good tickets, or an office in a high-rise. The surface was appallingly bumpy, the layout was too narrow and twisty for any degree of good racing,
it just looks nasty.
What would have been a hard day's work already was made just that little bit harder. It was often considered quite the feat if you could just finish the damn race. Then take all of that and consider that the racing was almost never Good. Formula One Circus left in 1987, going over to Phoenix the following year. Number 6. Valencia.
Valencia
has a
That's in Spain.
fantastic motorsport facility at the Circuit
Geography,
Ricardo
man.
Tormo. This circuit has been proven to be fantastic for all forms of motorsport, and being only 20 minutes from Valencia, an ideal place for the Valencia Formula One race. Problem is, the people in charge didn't see it that way. Instead, they opted for a street circuit around the harbour of Valencia, which ultimately culminated in some of the worst races ever. The circuit itself varied very little in elevation change, scenery was far from flattering given they were nestled in the docks, and passing opportunities, whilst existent, would require some very opportunistic or very stupid driving. Few good things came from this course. Number 5. Dallas. In an attempt to demonstrate Dallas as a world-class city, Texan State
are we just
decided
gonna
that
skip
bringing the
over
Formula
that?
One circus to their backyard was just what they needed. This circuit would host only one Grand Prix in 1984. There were a few reasons why.
And you know what sucks? It's like the second American race. Detroit and now Dallas. I mean, it seems like, you can't hate. I mean, the U.S. tried. It didn't always work. We have Miami, Texas and Vegas. I mean, they're
was
trying.
only one Grand Prix. Namely, the temperature
Vegas wasn't
was
that great
hot,
last year.
The track was literally melting as a result, and the track layout itself was all kinds of shithouse.
Shit's
The track
hot.
breaking up was a particular problem, with repairs not being completed until 30 minutes before the start of the Grand Prix. Naturally, drivers pondered boycotting the event, but the race went on anyway, with J.R. Ewing starting the race, and what we were treated to was pretty damn average, with the only memorable thing coming out of it was Nigel Mansell collapsing whilst pushing his car to the finish. Noble effort, but he did kind of make a habit of smacking his head on things back in the day. Formula One would not return to the state of Texas until 2012 with the Circuit of the Americas, and the slot left vacant on the 1985 calendar would be taken up by Adelaide. I suppose this story does have a happy ending then, doesn't it? Number 4. Zeltvig. Before the Red Bull Ring, there was Zeltvig. In terms of historical significance, Zeltvig played a key role in the Austrian Grand Prix becoming an event at all, but that doesn't excuse it from its own set of problems. The issue with the circuit was, well, there were several issues with it, really. The layout was, to put it nicely, simple. The racing wasn't particularly interesting as a result, and the surface was appalling, due to the concrete slabs that were used to construct the airfield wearing out over time, causing them to break up, move about, and proving an extremely uncomfortable bouncy castle for all the drivers. Fun fact, this was the place where Lorenzo Bandini scored his only Formula One victory. Actually, I don't know if that's a fun fact. Kinda sad, actually.
Bandini.
Number 3. Yas Marina. Yeah,
Yas Marina.
you saw this one coming, didn't you? To be fair, there are some sections of the circuit which do provide some good
Yeah, I was
battles,
gonna say
and
that.
the
Some are
facility
straight.
itself is impeccable. Under lights on
That's
the Grand Prix
nasty.
weekend, this circuit really is spectacular. However, we're often tuned in to watch a Formula One race to watch this thing called racing. Good old, hard-fought racing. Have we ever gotten this at Yas Marina? Most of you would say no. And you're right. Aside from the fact that it kinda ruined the end of the 2010 season, the only other race of note is the finale of the 2016 season, although that was mainly down to Lewis Hamilton slowing down the pack to try and get the Ferraris to win the World Championship for him. A little weird, but that's just how it was. But this also brought out the circuit's problem. You can't really pass anywhere on it. I mean, there is the hairpin if you're opportunistic, turn 8, turn 9 if you do the switchback, and turn 11. Anywhere else would be either impossible or impossible. Unfortunately, it looks set to be a firm fixture of the Formula One calendar for years to come. One can only hope that modifications are made to the circuit to improve its racing. Number 2. Sochi. I have absolutely no
Well,
defense
we haven't
for
been
this
back
circuit. There are
anyway.
boring circuits, and then there are crap circuits, and then there's 50 feet of shit, and then there is the Sochi Autodrome. Located in the Olympic Park where the 2014 Winter Olympics were held, the Sochi Autodrome has played host to the Russian Grand Prix since 2014. Initially, when looking at the track layout, there were concerns. The track just didn't look to provide overtaking opportunities that we would like. Eventually, these fears were realised.
Well,
and
we're
if
not
it
gonna be
weren't
back
for
here
the
anyway,
spectacular third
for
turn
obvious
or the
reasons.
run down to turn 1, it probably would have taken number 1 spot. Now look, I know that Herman Tilke designed this thing.
Dude,
but
who
we
the hell
can't
is
give
Herman
this guy too
Tilke?
much crap. After all,
Is it
you've got
Turkey?
to design for your client, not for yourself. Much like with Hockenheim, Tilke is just doing the job of designing the track, not tearing down the circuit, cutting through the forests that we all love, or putting a circuit in the middle of buttfuck nowhere with limited space with grandstands full of fans, hoping for the return of Vitaly Petrov. By the way, if you want to see what else he can design design? Have a look at the Blisterberg. That's a good circuit. But anyway, we're stuck with this circuit for the foreseeable future until such time that the interest is just weighted completely, but I really don't see that happening, so I guess we're going to be stuck with this contraption forever. And now for some honorable mentions.
The Adia, Shanghai, Buddha. Jesus Christ. Alright. 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 That one was crazy, but alright.
Number one,
Avis.
Caesar's Palace. With all
Caesar's
the talks
Palace.
about bringing Formula 1 to Las Vegas, perhaps this circuit should serve as a warning from history. Back in the early 1980s, the Caesar's Palace hotel higher-ups brokered a deal to host a Formula 1 race in their car park. The circuit itself was pretty well presented for being in a freaking car park, but of course, there were problems with it. It would have been a bit of a throwaway race, had it been in the middle of a calendar year, but the circuit was used to host the final race of the season for 1981 and 1982, the year where John Watson and Keke Rosberg fought out the World Championship. Had that thing been held on a more contemporary circuit such as Brands Hatch or Monza, or whatever, the lack of good racing probably would have been looked over, but the boring layout, which in itself caused issues on the driver's neck, as they were always turning left, and the fact that no one turned up ultimately culminated in what most would agree to be the worst Formula 1 track of all time.
Nobody cared, huh?
What circuit do you guys reckon is the worst? I'm sure this will create some good debate, but try and keep it clean, guys. Or hey, I mean, you can abuse each other, I really don't give a
I mean, that Zutwig and all, they were kind of crazy. They were kind of crazy. Yeah, Avis one was crazy. Y'all let me know what was the worst F1 track on here, man. Don't forget to like the video and sub as well as always. See you guys soon. Peace.